Hello, and welcome to the first workshop in the series of 3
that will cover the new Small Business Relief Grant sponsored by SelectCobb, which is a part of the Cobb County Chamber of Commerce. The Cobb County Board of Commissioners has allocated $50 million to be distributed by SelectCobb to small businesses impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. This program was launched on Monday, June 8th, and the application process will close on Friday, June 26th at 5 p.m. This workshop walks through the application process in detail. I will go over the respective requirements in addition to sharing screen prints of the application with examples. SelectCobb wants to assist as many qualified businesses in Cobb County as they can through this program, and this series of workshops is designed to help small business owners complete the application process as seamless as possible. Most importantly, write down any questions you have throughout the presentation and as you're completing the application. At the end of this workshop is an email address and phone number for SelectCobb to submit questions. In addition to the Q&A published on the SelectCobb grant website, the subsequent workshops will be based on these submitted questions. There's a short timetable to get applications in, less than 2 weeks away, so please utilize the information in this workshop to get started on your application. Let's get started.
Hopefully you've had the opportunity to view the informational webinar that aired on June 10th. If not, that's still available on SelectCobb's website. That would be a great place to start. It's an overview of what the program is. We're going to do the overview here a little bit, but the bulk of this workshop is going to be in detail about the application. After a brief introduction about me and my firm, I'll go into the program, the grant tiers, how the grant can be used, what types of businesses are eligible, what types of businesses are not eligible, and the types of documents that the application is going to ask you for. Finally, I will highlight those documents and actually give you some examples and show you and reinforce where business owners can ask questions if you have them. I'm Cecily Welch, and I've been in the accounting profession for a little over 30 years. And yes, I'm a small business owner. But before that, I traveled internationally and domestically doing audit, tax, and consulting. Initially in private accounting with just one company, and then several years in what used to be the Big 6 accounting firms. As my career progressed, I used my skills and my knowledge for a lot of advocacy work. I was appointed to the IRS Advisory Council. I'm on the board of the Georgia Society of CPAs, and I'm the past chair of the Tax Task Force of the Georgia Society of CPAs. That is why I'm so excited to be here presenting this workshop to help business owners access these resources in this unprecedented time. Like you, I started my business when I saw a need in the market that wasn't being met. I care about people and the world cares about money. So I figured the more people who knew about money, the better the world would be. As the accountant that you can understand, I spend my time helping clients, individuals, and businesses use their financial information to make sound decisions. Unfortunately, right now, businesses' primary goals have been, how do I keep the doors open? Owners want to continue to support their families, the communities, their employees, and the Cobb County Government has recognized this and partnered with SelectCobb to execute the $50 million grant program. So today, let's talk about the SelectCobb Small Business Relief Grant Program. You'll hear me throughout the presentation continuing to highlight that this is a grant. Yes, free money. As a small business is trying to gain traction, a loan, even at a great interest rate, isn't necessarily the best option. And so the Cobb County Government recognized this as well. And so that is why these are grants. We're going to cover the overview like I mentioned, and now let's go ahead and take some time and get into the details and show you some resources, the examples of the application, and help you get it completed and submitted in a timely basis. Similar to other relief programs, this grant is based on the payroll of a business. The grant funds don't all have to be spent on payroll. So for businesses that have more fixed costs like inventory or rent, the grant can be used for that. But the amount of the grant is based on the number of employees that you have. And yes, it's employees, not contractors. So you have to be giving them W-2s and reporting to the IRS on the appropriate quarterly payroll reporting forms. So there are 3 tiers. Tier 1 is for those businesses that have 1 to 10 employees, and the grant is up to $20,000. Tier 2 is for those employers who have between 11 and 50 employees, and the grant amount there is up to $30,000. And the third tier is for businesses that have employees up to 100. And that tier goes up to $40,000 for the grant. So depending on a variety of factors, a business may not actually receive the top amount of the grant in that tier, but we're talking about a grant for a for-profit entity. That rarely happens. A grant for a for-profit corporation or organization, I haven't seen it. So for all of my clients, all of my business clients, I am certainly advising them to look very carefully at this grant application and see if they qualify and take the steps to apply. So how can the grant funds be used? It's important for the funds to be planned. You as the business owner need to think through what you would use the grants for. There are stipulations and requirements that a business has to maintain and document and submit for the grant. Think about it like a charitable contribution. If I'm giving money to my alma mater, to North Carolina A&T State University, and I designate those funds have to go to the business school. Well, if the school gives it someplace else, then I'm able to take my money back and the university fails an audit, et cetera, et cetera. So these grants are the same way. They are specific. They can be spent in only a certain way.
60% of your grant must be used for payroll and 40% must be used for other COVID-related expenses. For example, personal protection equipment for employees, additional costs related to reopening, like replenishing inventory, purchasing new equipment like a bill pay system for each table, etc., etc. There's so much information being disseminated regarding different relief programs, so let me highlight how this program is different. Yes, how you spend the funds is restricted, but not in the same way you're probably thinking. The restriction is that you have to follow your own plan. So if in the grant application I state I need the funds to replenish inventory because it all spoiled when I closed unexpectedly, then that's what I need to use the funds for. I can't decide after I get the funds to instead spend it on rent. Even though rent is a necessary business expense, that's not what I indicated on the grant application. In determining how you'll spend the grant monies, seriously consider what you need to do specifically because of the COVID pandemic. There's another requirement of the grant. Funds need to be spent on items that are COVID related. If I'm a gym owner, I now need to buy masks, thermometers, reconfigure my check-in area to make it touchless, etc. All of this costs money. So highlight this in the grant application. The grant application asks for the plan of the funds, so it's important for businesses to think through how the funds will be utilized so that they benefit the business and meet the program criteria. A frequently asked question is, can these funds be used to pay down debt? And the answer is no. True, perhaps you now have more debt because of the COVID pandemic, and the last few months you've put these items on your company credit card. But the rules are the rules, so you can't use these funds to pay off debt. But you can use these funds to pay items that are indicated on your application, and maybe that frees up some other revenue that is now available for you to pay down that debt.
Who is eligible for these grants? Well, the business has to be in Cobb County. And yes, the application process does provide you a tool to look up and see, where is my business? Do I fall in Cobb County? When I first moved to Georgia 19 years ago, this was the most confusing thing. There's so many counties in Georgia and an unincorporated this, incorporated this. So please use the tool that's provided so that you can ensure your company meets the qualification and is within Cobb County.
A current business license is necessary. And yes, a copy is to be provided with the application. Now, I realize sometimes this compliance requirement falls off the list of things to do for small business owners, especially home-based businesses. However, remember, SelectCobb's goal is to help businesses keep their doors open. Therefore, if your business has a license that has lapsed, there is time to rectify this. Contact the county or city and renew or apply for your business license ASAP. Although there may be a late fee, it's probably a prudent expense if you're eligible for the grant. And besides, it's also a legal requirement. So go ahead and get that taken care of. And although I'm sure your business isn't in this situation, your business license should be dated from the time you were organized in Cobb County. And since the requirement for the grant is that you be in business for over a year, don't worry, cities and counties are able to process a license that is over a year late. But as I've said, I'm sure this isn't the case with your business. Yes, if you're a contractor and you've been claiming your business on Schedule C of your tax return, then you're a business. And yes, you should have a business license.
You also have to have been in business for at least 1 year. March 13th, 2020 is the date of determination on whether or not you've been in business for 1 year. To qualify for the grant tiers and the higher grant tiers, you have to have employees. Well, but what if it's just you? You're a sole proprietor, you work on your own. Well, you do still qualify for that tier 1, which is employees of 1 to 10. You count there. On the application, there's a section where you select sole proprietor, and that is where you get to the first tier, which is up to the $20,000.
Finally, hit the deadline. Please plan accordingly. Get started on the application now so you can identify any holes. You want to submit a completed application by Friday, June 26th at 5 p.m. With some of my small business clients, a big plus is the ability to be flexible and work with client special needs for payment terms, delivery methods, work hours, due dates. However, this is not one of those instances.
Please don't make the assumption that, well, maybe it'll get changed or maybe they'll make an exception. This isn't one of those deals. June 26th, 5 p.m. Mark your calendar. Another common question that we get, what businesses are eligible? Do I have to be a member of the Cobb County Chamber of Commerce? No, you don't. The Chamber of Commerce is great, does what it needs to do, but you don't have to be a member to apply for this grant, and members of the Cobb County Chamber of Commerce are not given preferential treatment either. There are businesses that are not eligible for the grants. Nonprofit entities, publicly traded companies, divisions of publicly traded companies, businesses that are in gambling, multi-level marketing organizations, real estate investments, or adult entertainment. So, if you report rental real estate on Schedule E of your tax return, no, this grant isn't a fit for you. The application process. The application process is all online. Even when you have to submit documents, it is all online. The only item that's outside of this online resource is the ability to send questions when you have them. And as I mentioned, at the end of the workshop, I'll give you a slide that has the email address for if you have questions. But everything is designed to be completed online. And yes, the businesses that are home-based, as well as the businesses that are renting or owning a commercial space, those all count as businesses. You just have to have your updated business license. So for all of the documents that you need to submit with the application, hopefully you have them, you just have to track them down. I know I've had a few conversations with my business clients about the amount of documentation and compliance work that they have to do. And yes, it's onerous, it's not a lot of fun. However, an operating business does have these types of documents and does maintain an updated set of books because that's what an operating business does. This application process might be a great chance for you to catch up on some of the things that you haven't gotten around to. I mean, because honestly, if we think about it, the IRS, when they look at small businesses, they want to make sure you are truly operating as such and not as a hobby. You don't want those expenses to be denied. Therefore, let's work on getting all these documents lined up, getting updated books, getting updated licenses, updated financials, so that our application is timely. And then once we're caught up, it's easy to stay caught up. So we've gotten through the overview. And remember, the introduction and overview webinar is also available online if you want to understand more about the program. Please take the time to look at that webinar, to go through this resource, read through all of the frequently asked questions, use all of these how-tos to submit the best application that you can. I know you're being pulled in many, many different directions. You're trying to keep the doors open. You're trying to make sure your family is okay. You're trying to decide who's going to do the next grocery store run. You're keeping in contact with all of your employees. But there's a reason why we're doing all these frequently asked questions and workshops. We want you to successfully be able to apply and get these grants and use this free money. Did I say free money? To help your business thrive and succeed. Although SelectCobb wants to help as many businesses as it can, resources are finite. So this is an application process. You want to spend time to design an application that really appeals to the committee. You want to complete the application as accurately as possible and put your business in the best light possible. There are over 30,000 businesses in Cobb County, so there is going to be some competition. You want to be sure that you take the time to identify and set up why your business is special and why you need the grant and what you're going to do with it. So let's get started and look at the application. When you go online, I strongly recommend you print the recommendations and the requirements, PDF or hard copy, because this is information that you're going to need consistently. You're going to have to refer back to it pretty frequently. It's not like when you open a bank account and that information gets filed in the back of the file cabinet somewhere. In addition to understanding what your requirements are while you're completing the application, get copies of what you're going to be submitting. At the tail end, assuming that you get the grant, which I'm hoping that you do, you're going to have to report back. And you're going to have to report back, and it needs to tie to what you originally submitted. Keep in mind that these funds do come from the federal government. So Cobb County Government is just implementing these rules. Where there's flexibility, they use flexibility. But there are going to be rules, there are going to be strings attached, but there's free money. It's worth making these steps to get these grants. So let's open up the application and create an account. At both the top and bottom of this page is the Start an Application button. Although it's not perfectly clear on this initial page, the first step is creating an account, and this is done through My Account. Then on the right, under Create a New Account, input the applicable information. I don't know about you, but I have an administrative business account that I use for newsletters, solicitations, etc. Do not use that account here. You're going to want to respond timely to any and all inquiries, and of course find out quickly if you receive a grant. So be sure to put an email address and phone number that you check daily. You'll also have the opportunity to create your password. Be sure to write it down. At present, there aren't any specific character requirements for the password, i.e. capital letters, exclamation points, or special characters. So pick whatever you are going to remember. Once your account is created, you're back at the main screen. I strongly recommend you print this screen to keep in your SelectCobb grant file for reference as you complete the application, and so you can easily see the compliance requirements if and when you receive a grant. Great. Now we've created an account, so we can get going on the actual application. You can save and exit the application if need be. You don't need to complete it in one sitting. To start the application, scroll through the entire page, and then at the bottom select the blue Click Here button. The system will automatically remind you of the requirements you're attesting to upon submitting an application. All local taxes are paid, located in Cobb County, it's a for-profit entity, and has been in business a minimum of 1 year. For those of you who have done various online forms for public entities, you know that it's an open secret that they can be pretty clunky. Most public sector companies cannot and aren't allowed to invest significantly in technology, but you'll be pleasantly surprised by this application process. There are no strange or unusual error messages that you're going to get regarding characters you can or can't use. And the best part about this is it does not kick you out every 10 minutes. So you have time to look for what the application is asking you for. So take your time, get it accurate. This is the screen where you affirmatively state you meet the respective qualifications for the grant. Select Save if you have to stop and need to come back, or Save and Next to move to the next page. Although we all get urgent interruptions, I strongly suggest getting all the way through the application. Just don't hit submit, but go through to the last page so you're aware of what you're missing and get moving on that quickly. Yes, the application allows you to save and exit in case you need to come back. If you have to go back in, just go back to the main grant page on the website and select Start an Application again. This takes you back to the login screen. So you've taken a break, exited the application, and now you're ready to start working again. When you re-enter, the return will take you back to page 1. But don't worry, the rest of the application is still there. It just always defaults to page 1. Also, please keep in mind that the application probably will change since the last time you were in this. All of these requirements are happening real time, and as we get questions from business owners, we want to clarify and give specifics. So the application might look different each time you log in because we've gotten a question that gets us to narrow or explain better on that particular question. Don't let it alarm you. How do you re-enter your application? Once you've saved your application, when you go back in, you'll need to select the In Progress, which is blue. Then select Edit. The system will open back to page 1 of the application. However, your information is saved, even if when you exit it, you were at a later page. I purposely point this out because, unfortunately, with the quickness that some of these online applications have been created for the various relief programs, this hasn't consistently been the case. I won't name names, but at least 2 banks who participated in the federal PPP loan program had this issue. Even though you saved an in-progress application, when you accessed it again, it was blank. Not the case here. As you complete the application for your business information, be sure to consistently use the same information that appears on your tax return. Regarding the confirmation that your business is in Cobb County, the application gives you a resource to affirmatively determine your business location. And yes, you can have a different mailing address versus business address. But to qualify for the grant, the business must be licensed in Cobb County. Although there is a box on the application where you can indicate that you don't know which district you're in, the application gives you a tool to look it up. So remember, our goal is to submit as much of a completed application as we can and to make it easy for the committee. They're going to be going through hundreds, thousands of applications. So let's go ahead and use the tools that they've given us and look up our location. The website that the application takes you to is pretty user-friendly. You should be able to successfully look up your address. And yes, the system just opens another page that you can toggle between. You haven't closed the application. If you use this tool and your address doesn't come up, then please send an email to grants@selectcobb.com. The site to look up your NAICS code is also pretty useful. It's important to be as accurate as you can. Recall, you're applying along with other similar businesses. There's a committee that's going to have a scoring process, a scoring matrix, and part of ensuring fairness will be trying to do their best to compare apples with apples and oranges with oranges. So your NAICS code is important. Your choice: sole proprietor or non-sole proprietor. If you looked at the application last week, you'll see that the wording has changed. But now it's been updated for clarity. Basically, pick your option based on your number of employees. For purposes of this application, make the selection based on the number of employees your business has. Don't focus so much on the business type and getting that exactly right. Instead, get the number of employees exactly right, regardless of business type. When we say employees, we mean employees and have to be W-2, not contractors. Why? Contractors aren't your employees because that contractor you hire has their own business. So that contractor would apply for a grant themselves as a sole proprietor. Also, these tiers are based on the number of full-time employees. What's a full-time employee? At least 30 hours a week or 130 hours a month per person. And no, combining people isn't an option. For example, assume I have 2 part-time employees who each work 20 hours a week. This does not translate into 1 full-time employee. The number of employees is determined as of March 12th, 2020. Seem like an odd date? Well, recall that's the date that Georgia had the shelter-in-place mandate from the governor. As accurately and succinctly as possible, you want to describe your business. There is a word count. You're limited to how much you can describe your business, but it does only count words, not letters and not spaces. Be sure to use this as an opportunity to be as descriptive as possible. The qualitative information is just as important as the quantitative information that we're putting on the application. Professionalism counts. Another requirement on the application is to put the date that the business was established. Don't worry if you can't quite remember what that is. It's on your tax return, and it can also be found on the Secretary of State website. I'll show you how to do that a little later. The next portion of the application asks for employee categories, not specific employees, but categories. For example, maybe I have 3 staff people and 2 managers, or 15 bussers, 20 wait staff, 50 kitchen staff. This is the information that you put in this portion of the application, and employee categories are as of March 1st, 2020. In the business description, see how I listed what my business does and listed how my business earns revenue? That's what the question is asking, so I want to be sure I answer it. Here's where you input your business start date. Don't worry, I have a screen print later where on the Secretary of State website you can get this information. As promised, on the Georgia Secretary of State website, you can find your formation date. By searching for your business name, you'll see your business name in blue. Select it. Then more detail will appear, including your formation date. Also, later in the application, you'll be asked for your state certificate of registration. In case you don't remember what file you put that in the back of the file cabinet, this is also available on the Georgia Secretary of State website. See the Filing History button. The business license is sometimes called the Occupational Tax Certificate. It's issued by the county or one of the cities within the county. Ackworth, Austell, Kennesaw, Marietta, Powder Springs, or Smyrna. And yes, the committee wants to know if you've received the PPP loan or the EIDL from the SBA. The wording of the application says any SBA loan, but we're not trying to get at if you have an SBA loan that you already had before the COVID pandemic. So you might have a 7A SBA loan. That is not included in this question. It just means one of the relief packages that came through with the CARES Act. This is a common question, and I have a very important answer that I want to make sure I get exactly right. So I'm going to read it to you. If your business has received a PPP loan or the SBA EIDL through the CARES Act, then the business doesn't currently qualify for this grant. However, if there are still funds available after all the businesses who didn't receive the PPP or EIDL relief are considered, then businesses who did receive the relief funds will be considered by the SelectCobb Small Business Relief Grant. That's why there's this disqualifying question in the application. So, long way of saying apply anyway. It's worth repeating here, if your business has received a PPP loan or the SBA EIDL through the CARES Act, then the business doesn't currently qualify for this grant. However, if there are still funds available after all the businesses who didn't receive PPP or EIDL relief, then businesses who did receive this relief will be considered for this grant. So, apply anyway. And on this screen is where you input the total funds you received. Add the PPP amount and the EIDL amount together and input as one number. For the PPP loan, input the bank with whom the PPP was funded. Note, this is where you got the loan from, which may not necessarily be your normal bank. Also, input the contact information for the bank that funded your PPP loan. You'll need to submit your 2018 and 2019 tax return. If you haven't completed your 2019 tax return yet, then you'll need to submit your 2019 financial statements. Here for financial statements, we just mean the balance sheet and the P&L, or the profit and loss. And yes, you should always get a copy of your tax return from your provider. They're your documents. You should be responsible for them and keep track of them. Your provider only has so much room on their server or in their file cabinet, and they do purge every so number of years. Also, they might hit the lottery and decide to hit the Caribbean. Can't get it then. The IRS? Well, let's put it this way. If you saw Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, that last scene, that warehouse, that's where your tax return is housed. It takes months for the IRS to track down your hard copy tax return. An electronic return, they can just tell you what number was on which line. So again, they're your documents. Please make sure you always get a copy, electronic or hard copy, from your provider. This is where you would select Choose File and upload the respective tax return or financial statements. However, don't worry if you don't have them on you immediately. Recall I said to get all the way through the application to identify any holes. So you can select Yes here, but then go to the next screen without attaching the files. Don't worry, the system will remind you of missing documents before letting you submit. When you select the Choose File button, this is the screen that appears. Yes, you can just drag and drop. Sometimes business owners are so focused on the day-to-day operation of their business that they really don't take the time to do or understand what a good set of financial books is. A good set of financial books helps the business owner operate and plan. And also, any financial institution, SelectCobb, banks are going to look at your set of books to make business decisions and for you to be able to be ready for these types of opportunities. Just managing your business just on making sure I have cash in the bank is not always in the best interest of your business. What exactly does a set of books look like? So, as the business owner, you're looking at it from detail to big picture. But SelectCobb and other entities that are looking at finances, they're looking at it from the summary. With good financial books, the path from summary to detail and from detail to summary should tie. The tax return has $10,000 of advertising. The books show 4 transactions that make up this total. And those 4 transactions were paid by you somehow, check, ACH, credit card. And the reason you paid them is because you have a corresponding invoice. And finally, it's recorded on the business's books because it's a business expense versus a personal expense. Not saying that SelectCobb is going to go into this much detail, but they are going to be looking at the summary level. And if you get the grant, they are going to be looking for substantiation of the expense. And this is what substantiation looks like. Okay, I promise, you're near the end of the application now. Now you're going to be answering demographic questions. These are statistical items that SelectCobb does have to report back on. They don't have an impact or an influence on whether or not you're going to receive the grant. But reporting back to the government, to the federal government, we do need to identify who is getting these funds. How are these grants being spent? And are they being spent the way that we indicated on the application that they were going to be spent? Are you a veteran? Is the business woman-owned, minority-owned? These reporting statistics don't have an impact on the committee's consideration, but are important for tracking purposes. Okay, so here's a very important part of the application. Why do you need these funds? As an accountant, of course, I look to the quantitative parts of the application first. But the grant committee is made up of a diverse group of decision makers. It's not all about the numbers. What's your narrative? How will this grant help you not just survive, but thrive? What is your unique story? This is where you lay it out for the committee. Describe the specific hardships your business is facing due to the pandemic. Be specific. Tell your story. Here's also where you describe how this grant will help. Be specific. Tell your story. This grant isn't designed for you to launch a whole new product line or shift business models, but explaining how your business must change to stay relevant and adjust to a virus that may be with us for a while, and the cost of those changes would be helpful for the committee. Plan, plan, plan. Seriously, think about what your business will look like over the next 4 months. Write it down. Do a few calculations. The committee will be evaluating and scoring applications for 30 days. Then they'll notify and disperse the first 50% of the funds. Then each business submits certification and documents supporting that the funds were spent appropriately. Then the committee disperses the second part of the grant. The committee's goal is to disperse as quickly as possible, with the second disbursement being no later than 60 days from the first. Some of the restrictions for this relief money also has to do with timing, so the committee does need to disperse quickly and by a specific due date. And if you receive the grant, you do need to spend the funds by December 1st. Shh! They don't want all of this money. They don't want it back. They want to grant it all. So let's help them by submitting great stories and great applications. The plan I told you to write down, here's where you put it in the application. Don't worry, it doesn't have to be perfect yet. You can go back and correct it. Remember, the goal is to figure out where you plan to spend the money, ensure at least 60% is on payroll, and explain why the other 40% is COVID related. Here's my first attempt. The total is $27,000. Well, that's too much. My maximum tier is only $20,000. And payroll costs are only 44%. That doesn't meet the criteria either. So I double check my notes and update it on how I'm going to spend the grant money. You'll see I adjusted the rent number down. Well, I always have the same rent, COVID or no COVID, so that's not the compelling reason on why I need the grant money. Doesn't really differentiate me from other businesses, nor does it explain why this need is COVID related. I also double check with the cleaning service to really nail down my expected cost for them coming in more frequently and doing a deep clean each time. And I find the exact computer that I'm going to purchase so I can get the cost correct. So it bears repeating. Make sure your plan for the grant funds meet the 60% for payroll and 40% for other. And for those of you businesses who have received the PPP loan, payroll taxes don't count as a forgivable item for payroll costs for the PPP loan. That is not the case here. Your true payroll costs count as the 60%. The payroll taxes, retirement plan contributions, or health insurance that you're paying, that's part of your payroll costs. That is all included in the 60% calculation. My dear business owners, I do want you to be aware that as part of the legislation that's getting passed, there are areas where banks and financial institutions are not going to be held liable in case any of the relief funds are used fraudulently. Not that you as a business owner are planning on doing anything fraudulently, but there aren't such forgiveness areas in the law for the business owner. So let's be careful. No one expects you to be perfect. But let's be diligent about how we track and use these funds. Let's not grab and pay whatever expense we have from whichever account has the money. No paying for it personally and then having the business reimburse you. Let's be more diligent about these funds. Now, let's finalize the application. The system will let you know if you're missing any attachments or if you haven't answered any questions, and it will ask you to recertify that you qualify for these grants. Looks like I forgot to fill in the employee category. Let me take care of that. Whew. So, we've made it through the application. Now, what about those documents I said that we have to submit? Is there any help with those? Can you help me figure out where those are? Yes. In any of those areas that ask for documents, this is the screen you'll see when you select Choose File. You can drag and drop items here, or click and paste, or search a computer using the plus sign. Here's a list of some of the documents that you'll be asked to submit. I think the most common question we get is, what is a payroll register? Well, a payroll register looks different depending on your payroll company. ADP's register looks different than Ceridian's register, which looks different than Gusto's register. Saying a payroll register is like saying, I have a car. They all do the same thing, they just look a little different depending on the manufacturer. Here's a payroll register. It lists all the employees, it lists the timetable, the date of the check, the amount each employee was paid, and the taxes associated with each employee. Here's another payroll register produced by a different payroll provider, but it still has the same information on it. The quarterly payroll forms, however, do not vary. Those are standard no matter who does your payroll. This is the federal Form 941 for 2020. They do get updated every year, so it matters what year it says up in the corner. Hopefully your payroll company provides you with a copy of this each quarter. If not, request it. Or maybe they send it to you each quarter, but you don't really look at it. We'll open that email, save that document. Certificate of Organization. You got this when you first registered your business with the state of Georgia. In case you don't know where this document is filed, you can download it from the Georgia Secretary of State site. After going through the same search feature we did before, select your business name and then select the Filing History button. And then the Business Formation button. You can now download the filing certificate. Now we're ready to save the application. Look for this warning. Double check your work before hitting submit. We've completed the application, so what are the next steps? I guess one of the first next steps is, what do I do if I just realized I made a mistake? So you've made a mistake. Nobody's perfect. So what do? Don't submit another application. Instead, send an email to grants@selectcobb.com. They'll open the application back up so that you can now edit it. Be sure to get the application submitted by Friday, June 26th at 5 o'clock. The selection committee has a score matrix that they'll be utilizing to evaluate the applications, and this takes approximately 30 days. The grants will be distributed in 2 increments. I'm sure we've all heard stories of some of the relief payments being used in ways that weren't quite in the spirit of the legislation. So to stop that from happening in this case, the grants are going to be distributed in 2 increments. The first increment you get, and then you have to substantiate back to the committee that you spent it according to the grant application. You can prove the expenditures and you have receipts and invoices. Once that's received, you'll get the second increment for the grant. That also has to be substantiated back to the committee. Where that isn't the case, where the business can't substantiate the funds were spent where they were supposed to be spent, the committee will claw the grant funds back. They don't want to do that. So let's help them by doing what we need to do to make sure what we get, we keep. Remember, all completed applications submitted by June 26th at 5 o'clock will be reviewed. This isn't a first come, first served basis, but the application does need to be complete. So start the application now, because inevitably there will be an item or 2 that you have to track down. So get that going now so that you can meet the deadline. So I know I hear from my business owner clients that the amount of paperwork and regulations and documents that they have to keep track of is pretty onerous. And I agree, but it is what it is. And without the substantiation, without these records, SelectCobb is going to have to claw back these funds. They don't want to claw back these funds. Let me say that again. They don't want to claw back these funds. And you know what? Why? I'll put it this way. My brother calls me the hippiest capitalist he's ever met. It always comes down to the money. The more people in Cobb County who are working, the less that the county has to pay out and look out for helping with rent, with food, with other essentials. So let's help the Cobb County government help us. Please, please, please do everything we can to get these funds and use these funds appropriately. So what are your next steps? Start the application. Submit your questions. Gather all your documents. Keep copies of everything. Submit the application by June 26th at 5 o'clock. In addition to the FAQs on the SelectCobb website, here is the email address and phone number to submit questions. The website for applications, which I assume you know because that's how you got to this workshop, is selectcobb.com/grants. Thank you for listening to this workshop today. There will be 2 more of these workshops before the application deadline. So I look forward to seeing you on Friday, June 19th at 10 a.m. and Wednesday, June 24th at 10 a.m. These workshops will add clarity and answer some of the questions you business owners are asking. I look forward to seeing you and good luck with getting your application completed.